Hey guys, I really just want to take a moment. I really appreciate your school inviting me to be here. It's a big honor for me to be here. And before I came, my kids said to me, "Dad, why are you going to fly across the country?" I live in California. They're like, "Why are you going to fly across the country to speak to a bunch of strangers you've never met for 45 minutes?" And you know what I tell my kids? I would fly 4 times as far to speak to just one of you for 5 minutes. That's how important this is to me. It really means a lot to me. I thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. I want to share a story with you. I'm 6 years old, and I love to do what all 6-year-olds love to do. I love to draw. I used to draw all the time. I used to draw on the walls with my mother's lipstick. I have a twin sister, Rena. I used to draw on her forehead with markers. Of course, I would use the black Sharpie, so it was like, indelible. And I knew that I wanted to be an artist. That's what I was going to do when I grew up. And then one day, I'm 11 years old. I'm in a movie theater, and I'm watching the movie E.T. Anyone seen the movie E.T.? Okay, good. So I'm watching E.T., and I said, "Mom, that is what I want to do when I grow up." And she's like, "What, you want to leave planet Earth in a spaceship?" I'm like, "No, Mom. You know what I want to do? I want to make movies. I want to be a movie maker." See, I didn't know anything about movies. I didn't know anything that you could be a director. All I knew is when I looked up at the screen, there was something about it that I wanted to do. That's what I want to do. I want to be a filmmaker. I only had one problem. I had no idea how to do it. So I went to the library. I got books on filmmaking and cameras and lenses and storyboarding. I found out the director of E.T. is a Jewish guy named Steven Spielberg. I thought, if he could do it, I could do it. That's what I'm going to be, a filmmaker. I found out that on the weekend, Steven Spielberg used to get his sisters and his family, used to make short films. I said, I'll do the same thing. I bought a video camera. I got my sister, my older brother. Every weekend, we're making murder movies, monster movies, fake blood, little firecracker explosions. One movie I made, I tied my sister up to a tree, extra tight. Afterwards, we went into the house to watch the movie. My mom's like, "I like the movie, but where's your sister?" I said, she's still tied to the tree. What's wrong? I knew I wanted to be a director. And then I was in high school. I think I was a sophomore, junior. Someone said to me, "Well, what are you going to do when you get out of high school?" I said, "Well, I want to be a filmmaker." They said, "No, you don't, because if you want to be a filmmaker, you got to move out to Hollywood. And Hollywood is filled with weirdos. You don't want to be a weirdo, do you?" And I said, "No, I don't want to be a weirdo." And I'm telling you guys, right then and there, I gave up on my dream of wanting to be a director because one person told me that I would end up a weirdo in Hollywood. By the way, today I do live in Hollywood, and my 4 kids would tell you, Daddy is a weirdo. So much for that anyway. But I was impressionable, and I gave up on my whole dream. I said, "You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be an artist." So my parents were so supportive. They got an art teacher to come to my house. Every week, she would teach me watercolor, painting, charcoal. She'd set up a still life. She'd always said to me, "Draw from life, Saul. You got to draw from life. Drawing is about seeing." She'd set up a bowl with like fruit and stuff. I would do watercolor and drawing. That's what I was always doing. I was going to be an artist. And then I'm a junior in high school. I see another movie that changes my life. I see the movie The Little Mermaid. Anyone seen that movie? Yeah. You guys can admit it too. Guys, come on, you saw Little Mermaid, right? Come on, Ariel, how you doing? Yeah. So I see The Little Mermaid, and I'm like, Mom, that's what I want to do. She's like, "What, you want to fall in love with a fish?" I'm like, "No, Mom, I want to work in animation. I want to work in animation at Disney." You know why? Because animation combines my 2 passions, my 2 loves, my love of filmmaking and my love of drawing. You put them together, animation. And plus, I found out that Disney has a studio in Orlando, Florida. I don't have to go out to Hollywood. So there I am, junior in high school, and I have my dream. I know exactly what I want to do someday. Saul wants to be a Disney animator, except I had just one problem. I had no idea how to do it. So, you know what I did? I said to my mom, "How am I going to do it?" She's like, "You know what? I got an idea." She takes me on a plane from New York. Grew up in Long Island. She takes me to Disney World. She's walking me around Disney World all day, going over to every single person. "My son wants to be a Disney animator. Can you help him?" My son, embarrassing the heck out of me. I'm like, "Mom, please." All of a sudden, I remember we get to the It's a Small World boat ride. She goes, "My son wants to be a Disney animator." The lady at the boat ride's like, "Man, do you want to get on the boat or off?" "On or off, lady." Finally, she goes over to one guy. He says, "Look, if your son wants to be a Disney animator, he's got to be part of the cast." You see, everybody at Disney is called cast members. That's what they call the employees of the company. If you want to be a cast member, he's got to go to the Disney casting building. That's where they hire the cast. So she drives me a couple blocks away. I get to this unbelievable building. The doorknobs were like gold, brass, themed to look like the Alice in Wonderland ones that speak. You know, I open up the doors, open up that door, an atrium with gold statuettes of Mickey, Pluto, Donald, Goofy, Minnie. Wow. A huge ramp going up, Peter Pan painted on the ceiling. I'm like, where am I? This is insane. Finally, I get up there. The lady calls me up. She says, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm here because I want to be a Disney animator. She says, we don't hire animation people here. This is for people that want to work in the parks. I said, oh. She said, but hold on a second. She walks out, comes back in a minute later, hands me a piece of paper. That piece of paper became the most valuable piece of paper I ever held in my hands. That piece of paper was a list of 8 schools, 8 art schools that Disney recruits from. She says, you want to be a Disney animator? You got to go to one of these schools. How many times I meet students where I say, what are you going to do when you grow up? And they tell me, I want to be this or I want to be that. I say, well, how are you going to do it? They say, I don't know. Well, then guess what? You're not going to do it. You go to an unbelievable restaurant. You taste an unbelievable dessert. You can make it at home if you have the recipe. This piece of paper was the recipe. And the equation began in my head. Saul plus go to one of these schools will equal dream of becoming a Disney animator. So my mom takes me on a trip to different art schools. All these schools on the eastern seaboard to see like which one would be a good fit for me. I remember walking through different art schools thinking, who am I going to hang out with? Do you have any idea how strange they are in art school? I'm talking weird. I'm talking black lipstick, piercings, big eyelashes. These are the guys I'm talking about. I'm talking strange. I remember I get to one school in Columbus, Ohio, the Columbus College of Art and Design. I'm looking at the halls of this school. The artwork is unbelievable. It's the most beautiful paintings and illustrations I'd ever seen. I said to the guy touring us around, I'm like, dude, your seniors are so talented. He's like, Saul, that's not our seniors, that's our freshmen. I said, that's your freshman? And they're 100 times better than me? You know how I felt at that moment? I was intimidated. Why would I want to go to a school where I would be the worst one in the school? But you see, I have a theory. I don't care if you're 2 years old. I don't care if you're 120 years old. Every single person in the entire world wants the exact same thing. Everybody wants greatness. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be mediocre. Oh, you could be sitting out there right now saying, I'm going to be a lawyer someday. Okay, what kind of lawyer you want to be? Mediocre? No, I want to be a great one. Or maybe you want to get married someday. Oh, I got this guy to introduce you to, but he's very mediocre. You want his number? Could you give his number to my friend? See, we all want greatness. How do you get that? Michael Jordan is in the NBA the first year. The first year in the NBA, Jordan was already a scoring machine. He'd hit that game-winning point at UNC. He was already had Air Jordan sneakers. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. After one game, Mike is walking off the court. It's a true story. One critic comes up to Michael Jordan and says, Mike, you're a scoring machine, but you have no defensive game. You know what Michael Jordan could have said to the guy? Dude, you're probably wearing my Air Jordan sneakers right now. You probably have my Michael Jordan posters over your bed. I'm going to listen to one critic? You know how much money I just made the last hour on that court? But something in Michael's head says, if something I'm doing is giving that guy the impression that I don't have a defensive game, I guess I better work harder on defense. And he did. And you know what? Next year, one player in the NBA was named Defensive Player of the Year, number 23, Michael Jordan. You see, we all want greatness. To get that, you need to know what you do well. That's number one. Now comes the hard part. You need to know where you need to excel, where you need to work on yourself. But that's not really the hard part. We all know where we need to work on ourselves. The hard part is actually doing something about it. And that's why I chose this school. I said, you know what, if I'm the worst one at this school, then if I go to this school, I'll have to get better. They'll make me better. And thank God they chose me. The first day, I walk into my dorm room. Someday when you guys go off to university, you walk into your dorm room, it's a terrifying moment because you have no idea who you're going to be stuck with because you're going to live with this stranger for at least a year. I walk into my dorm room in Columbus, Ohio. Over my roommate's bed is a life-size sculpture of Jesus on the cross. I'm like, where the heck am I? I was the only Jew in my school, one of the only ones. This was his high school art project. That's what he did in his Catholic high school out of paper mache. They made Jesus on the cross. That was their project, you know. We make Hanukkah menorahs. They put Jesus on the cross. This guy had a shaved head, a big blonde mop of hair that went over one eye. I never saw that eye. It was like hidden, you know. The guy had these red leather boots that went up to here with all these like rungs for laces, but he never put the laces in because that means conformity. Oh, he wouldn't do that. He doesn't conform. He's an artist, you know. So when the guy would walk down the street, those tongues of those shoes would be like flapping in front of him. You could hear him like a mile away. I walk into another guy's room. I'm looking around. I'm like, what is that? I see some guy's got Mickey Mouse slippers in his room. What kind of guy wears Mickey Mouse slippers in college? I look a little higher. He's got a Mickey Mouse bedspread. He's got the Disney Mickey Mouse clock, the Mickey Mouse phone. He's got every Disney movie poster on the wall. It was Disney World in a room. I'm like, this guy's Mickey nuts. I look in the corner, he's got sketchbooks. I'm like, you know what? He's not around. Let's see how good he is as an artist. I pick up the sketchbook and I'm thumbing through it. It's like 50 drawings of Mickey Mouse. It's like Mickey Mouse playing baseball, scared Mickey, sad Mickey. I never drew Mickey before in my life. I was intimidated. I look in the corner, there's another sketchbook. I pick up that sketchbook, it says Mickey hands. I'm like, let's see how, Mickey hands, what's that? I open it up, and it's the 4-finger white Mickey glove from like 50 different positions. This guy's crazy. I turn to leave the guy's room, and I bump into the guy whose room it is. Uh-oh, I'm busted. I said, hey man, I'm sorry. He turns to me and says, how you doing? I'm like, good, what's your name? He says, my name's Jason, but people call me Mickey Mouse Jason. I'm like, they call you what? He goes, Mickey Mouse. I'm like, I heard you. You have a Disney nickname? He's like, what, you don't? I'm like, no, I don't. I go back to my dorm room. All I had was the Michael Jordan Wings poster over my bed and one Disney book. I got on the phone with my mom. I'm like, Mom, you got to send me Mickey slippers now. I need a Disney nickname now. I felt like in order to get into Disney, I'd have to have a Disney World room like that guy. A week later, I'm sitting in an auditorium. There's got to be 350 students in there. Huge auditorium, every freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. A guy from the Walt Disney Company comes to our school. He sits there and he says to us, how many of you want to be Disney animators someday? Every hand went up. He said, if you want to be a Disney animator, you need to realize only 4 of you will probably ever get there. That's how competitive it is. 4 out of 350 of you. As soon as I heard that, you know what I thought in my head? I feel bad for the other 349 students that are going to be behind me because I'm getting in. Then he said, if you want to get in, you got to get the internship. No internship, no Disney. And if you want the internship, you need a portfolio, an art portfolio, 25 pages of life drawing, figure drawing, anatomy drawing. He goes, we don't want to see any drawings of Mickey Mouse. I was like, oh yeah, Mickey Mouse Jason. That's right. You could see the guy like, settle in his chair. Oh boy, But the equation began again. The guy from Disney says, you want to get into Disney? You got this school? Check. Now you know what else you need? A portfolio, figure drawing. Life drawing and anatomy. Next day I go to figure drawing class. I'm sitting in there in figure drawing class. I got my sketch pad, sharpened my pencils, put my Run DMC, old school little hip hop rap going. It gets me in the zone, I start drawing. Before I draw, the professor says, hold on. Before you draw, students, I want you to just stare at the model in the middle of the room. So we're staring at the model, and she's standing in a pose, not moving, and like a minute goes by. How long can you stare at someone not moving for a minute? It's a little awkward. She's just posed like that. 2 minutes go by, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes go by. Finally, he says, okay, get ready to draw. So we're about to draw. He goes, well, hold on, before you draw, model, I want you to leave the room. She says, sir, I'm supposed to be paid for a 4-hour session? He's like, oh, don't worry, we'll pay for the whole thing, but you can just leave. As a matter of fact, take all your stuff, go away, we'll see you tomorrow. She's totally confused. Okay, she leaves. I'm sitting there, we're all sitting there. He says, okay, now draw. I raise my hand. He's like, is there a problem? I'm like, yeah, the model's gone. He's like, what'd you do? I gave you 5 minutes. Did you look? Did you really look? He says you have to develop your eye, where you look at the gesture that the model is standing and look at the way the back leg, the weight is shifted, the tilt of a head, a little arm up, a little story, a little angle of the head, all these things you got to put in. He says you have to look at the gesture of the way she's standing, you see it quickly, and then you don't even need the model anymore because you've seen it. He said drawing is about seeing. Reminded me of my teacher that came to the house all those years earlier. That was figure drawing. It was awesome. The first week in school, everybody's walking around the school going to meet everybody. They're going out to parties. I don't know what it is, but in Columbus, Ohio, people are incredibly thirsty because there's so much drinking going on. It's like nonstop drinking. I went to one party. There's this guy in the corner of the room, and the guy is not drinking. He's drawing people drinking. He's like sketching. I remember some girl throwing up, and he's drawing pictures of her throwing up. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I said, what art project is this for? What class is this for? The guy says to me, it's not for a class. I said, so what are you drawing for? He says, I'm drawing because I want to get better. This became my best friend. His name is Andy. Andy was the most talented artist in the school. And you know what? The guy worked nonstop. He was disciplined. Became my best friend. The more I hung out with Andy, the better an artist I became. It's because who we choose to hang out with actually affects who we become. It wasn't even that he was such a good artist. It was that he was disciplined. He was serious about it. Where everyone else was just messing around and wasting time, he was drawing nonstop. Sophomore year, I send my portfolio to Disney and I wait. Now, I'm just a sophomore. I didn't really expect to get into the Disney company as a sophomore, but I wanted to go through the process. So I send my portfolio in, I wait. Envelope comes in the mail a month later. Has that little gold leaf Mickey embedded on the envelope. My name printed. I couldn't believe my name was printed on something with the Disney logo. It was awesome. I open up that envelope. I'm reading it. It's all so thankful that you sent your portfolio, and unfortunately, you didn't get it. I wasn't that depressed. Like I said, I didn't expect to get in. So I took that letter. I thought it was the coolest thing to be rejected from Disney, my name on the thing. I put it up over my desk. Fuel for the fire. It's going to inspire me. I keep drawing more and more. I would go to the zoo. I'd get anatomy books on elephants. You guys watch a movie like The Lion King. How do you think these animators know how to draw animals? You got to spend 100 hours at the zoo. I'd get anatomy books on elephants, and I'd see the way that their trunk moves and the cartilage at the end of the thing here and the way the skeletal system is, and I'd get that anatomy down so that by the time I went to the zoo, I would be familiar with the anatomy. I did tons of drawings. And at this point, everybody in the school knew there's two guys that are going to be getting into Disney, Saul and Andy. And midway through junior year, I'm home in New York. I think it was like Christmas break in the middle of the year. And I get a call, and it's Andy. I'm like, hey, man, what's up? He's like, blink off, did you hear? I'm like, no, did you hear? He's like, yeah. I said, what'd you hear? He goes, I got the internship. I said, you got what? He goes, the internship. I'm like, you got it? Congratulations, man, it's amazing. He's like, thanks. I'm like, I got to hang up. They could be trying to call me right now because we didn't have call waiting back then. So I'm like, I got to hang up. I hang up the phone. I'm pacing in my dining room back and forth. Remember, my mom comes in just at that moment. She's like, did you hear? I'm like, Mom, Andy got in. She's like, oh, any minute you're going to hear. We're all excited. All of a sudden, it hits me, wait a minute. My last name begins with the letter B. His last name begins with the letter H. Shouldn't they have called me first? Shouldn't it be alphabetical? I can't stand it. I get on the phone, I call the head of Disney myself. I'm like, hi, my name is Saul Blinkoff. I want to find out about oh, Saul, I got your name here on a list. I'm like, yeah, and? He goes, yeah, you didn't make it. I said, what? He says, you didn't get it. I said, oh, okay, thanks. Hang up the phone. Awful. This one hurt. This one hurt bad. My best friend, the next day, was on a plane. You know what they call Disney World? They call it the happiest place on Earth. What a great name to call your product, right? See, everyone wants to be happy. But if you want to be happiest on planet Earth, the only place you can do that is in sunny, beautiful Orlando, Disney World. Happiest place on Earth. That's where Andy's going. You know where I get to go? Columbus, Ohio in the wintertime. Gray skies, bitter, freezing cold. The most depressing place on Earth. And you know what else I have waiting for me at school? I get to walk the halls and have everybody come up to me and go, oh, Saul, what are you doing here? Oh, you didn't get, oh, I'm sorry. Hey, man, where's Andy? Oh, he's at Disney. Wow. Oh, you didn't make it? Oh, I'm sorry. All day, everyone feeling sorry for me. See how I got out of that? I gave up. I gave up on the whole dream. I gave up on the whole thing. I said, you know what? I'm not an idiot. I could see what's real. Andy is 100 times better than me as an artist. The guy is unbelievable. Of course he got in. Just because I want it doesn't mean I'm ever going to be good enough to get it. I gave up on the whole thing, guys. Next day, buddy calls me up. Says, Saul, I got tickets to go see a movie. He's like, you want to go? I'm like, dude, I'm not in the mood. He's like, they're free tickets. See, when someone offers you free in college, you go. So I went to the movies. And I'm watching a movie. And at the end of the movie, tears are streaming down my face. I was crying It's a movie about a true story about a guy who's 5 feet tall. He doesn't have an ounce of athletic ability, and he wants to play football at Notre Dame. What movie is it? Yeah, Rudy. How many people have seen Rudy? Oh, that's good. How many people have not seen Rudy? No guilt. Let me see the top two. Okay, how many people have not seen The Hangover? And only the rabbi's hand goes up. Okay, a couple people. Okay. Actually, Rabbi, your hand did not go up, by the way. Just point that out. So I'm watching this movie about this guy. It's a true story. If you guys were friends with Rudy Rudiger, and as his friend, he told you know what my dream is? I want to play football at Notre Dame. You know what you would have told him as his friend? You would have said, dude, you're 5 feet tall. You're not an athlete. It's not going to happen. Get a new dream. You know what Rudy said? Oh, yeah? Well, we'll just see about that. And he tries to get into Notre Dame. And you know what happens? Rejected. And he tries a second time. Rejected. Third time? Rejected. But fourth time? Well, if you look at the movie poster for Rudy, the tagline on the poster says, when people tell you dreams don't come true, you tell them about Rudy. The fourth time he gets in. And I'm watching the movie and I'm like, if it could happen to that guy who is not athletic, then it could happen to me who was not the most talented. As a matter of fact, you could forget everything I've just said in the last 15 minutes. I'd be fine with that. At least you would remember one thing. You met a guy who was not as qualified as everyone else, who really tried to get his dream at Disney. At least remember that one thing. Then I called up Disney the next day. I said, why didn't I get in? How close was I? They said, Saul, there were 3,800 portfolios from around the world. We only picked 17. You made it to number 20. I missed it by 3, and I was prepared to give up on the whole thing. Are you kidding me? Do you know how many times in life you could be so close to achieving something, and all you have to do is push a little bit more? Then I said to him, so why didn't I get in? He says, Saul, you need more perspective in your figure drawing. I said, what do you mean? He says, instead of drawing the model from where you're sitting in figure drawing class, why don't you get up and move around and look up at the model or look down at the model and give us some perspective. Give us something dynamic. Answer key. The guy at Disney's telling me what I got to do. Thank you. Hang up the phone. Next day, I go to figure drawing class. Instead of sitting in the chair, I go in the corner. We have this huge wooden box that they use for still lifes. Before the class starts, I move this heavy thing into the middle of the room. I stand on a chair. I stand on the box. My head is 20 feet up in the air. The model comes in. She's standing right next to me. I'm looking down at her. She's looking up at me like I'm nuts, and I'm drawing. I remember some guys in the back of the room. Hey, look at Blinkoff standing up on that box. Look at the dork. What's he doing? Did I care what they thought? No. The guy at Disney just told me what I have to do. So I did it. I did all these great drawings that day. From just looking down, it was awesome. So much different perspective. I remember after class, I go over to my professor and I say, Professor, is there anything else I can do? He says, Saul, let me ask you a question. Can you control whether Disney says yes or no? I said, no. He says, can you control how good any other artist is? I said, no. He says, so what can you control? So I thought about it, and I said, well, I can control how good I am as an artist, right? He says, no, you can't. He said something so profound. Listen to what he said. He said, the only thing you can control, Saul, is how hard you work. The outcome, that's not up to you. Stop thinking about the outcome and focus on only what you can do to get better. The only thing that we can control in our lives is the investment we make. Steve Jobs controlled one thing. You know what I'm going to do all day Sunday and every day? I'm going to sit in my garage. I'm going to get this electric board and I'm going to get this Wozniak guy, and we're going to just keep building and building and building and building. He became so successful so quick, he didn't even realize how successful he was. He just kept going. He kept building. I said, thank you to my professor. I'm about to walk out of the room. He says one more thing. If you can't say this line, you don't go to bed. He said, you know how many thousands of students there are out there working on their portfolios right now? Whatever dream you guys have right now, if some of you do actually at this young age know what it is you want to do, there's about 1 billion people out there that want the same thing, that are going to work on it every second of the day. Every time you go on Facebook and you're going to check and see what your friends are eating, I got to see the picture of that burger because it's awesome. Those other people, they're working hard right now. That's how competitive it is. And he looked at me and he said, Saul, write this down. Nobody worked harder today than me. If you can't say that, you don't go to bed. Nobody worked harder today than me. I wrote it on a piece of paper. I put it up over my desk. And every night I'd go in my room and I'd be finished my day's drawings and I'd look and I'd say that line. I'd say, you know what? I could do more. I could do another drawing. I could do another drawing. I would draw my hand from another position. I got that portfolio together, and I'm about to send it into Disney. But before I do, I look at the dorm room of all my favorite drawings that I had done throughout my years at school. You know what I did? I ripped them all off the wall, every single one of them. I ripped them down. Instead, I put up drawings from Michelangelo, from Leonardo. I called up Andy at Disney. I'm like, hey man, send me artwork, send me drawings. I wallpaper my walls with artwork that's 100 times better than me. You know why? Because you have to have a vision of what you're trying to become. That made me just know, oh, well, I got to do better on this. I got to do better on that. I'm about to send my portfolio to Disney, and I find out I'm not allowed. See, Beauty and the Beast just came out, and it was nominated for a Best Picture Oscar. So now it was 100 times more competitive. Disney was getting flooded with portfolios. They said, this year, we're going to send a rep from the Disney studios to come to your school. You're going to show the rep the portfolio. If he likes it, he's going to send it to Florida, where he and the team are going to look at it at another review. So I got my portfolio together. I showed it to the school's review board. They chose me, and the guy from Disney comes. There's about 8 students that each get to show their portfolios one after another. Of course, that day, well, it was alphabetical, and my name was first. So I go in there. This guy walks in. He's got to be 75 years old. The guy was one of the original animators on Sleeping Beauty in the 40s. He knew Walt Disney. I was intimidated. I was terrified to show him my drawings. He's looking through my portfolio. He's going, Saul, my boy. That's how he talked. He had the coolest voice. He's like, Saul, my boy, I like your drawings. I'd like to send your portfolio to Florida for further review. Would you like that? I'm like, would I like that? Yes. Yes, I would like that. I hand him my portfolio, and as I hand it to him, I don't let go. I'm clutched onto it, and I yank it out of his hands, but he's tagged onto it, and I'm in a tug-of-war with a 75-year-old man. He's like, Saul, my boy, what are you doing? I yanked the portfolio out of his hands. True story. I said, let me ask you a question. Where are you going after this school? He says, well, I'm going to that school, then I'm going to that school. I said, so when do you actually need it in Florida? He's like, well, not for 2 weeks. Why? I said, because any drawing that I do tomorrow has to be better than every single drawing that's in this book. And if I could have 2 more weeks, I could do better work. He said, no problem. Send it to me. He gave me the address. You know how I felt at that moment? Elated. For the first time in my life, somebody liked my artwork other than my mom. The guy from Disney was telling me I was talented. Before that, my mom was always like, oh, you're so talented. You got to say that. You're my mom. The guy from Disney gave me the exact answer I wanted. And you know what? As I walked out of the room, it wasn't good enough for me. I'm about to walk out, and I said, Bill, let me ask you a question. You look at a lot of students' artwork? He's like, yeah. I said, so any ideas what I could do to make my work better? You see, when I didn't get into Disney the second time, of course I was rejected. It would be a perfect opportunity for me to ask. Anything I did wrong, you could tell me. But right now, the head of Disney told me exactly what I wanted to hear. And still, I wanted to know, is there anything I can do to make it better? He said, so you got to work on effects. I said, what's that? So when you guys watch a movie like The Lion King and it's raining, there's fire, there's water, there's smoke. That's a division of animators called effects animators. He says, you should do some pages of effects drawings. Now, I didn't have any dream to be an effects animator, but when the head of Disney tells you put some effects in, you do it. I said, thanks. I go back to my dorm room. I set up a pot with water. I'm setting the faucet up to drip. I'm watching the way those ripples go and the little drops. And I did drawings and drawings of them. I set up a candle and I lit it, and I'm watching the way that flame dances on the wick. I did drawings of that. As a matter of fact, I took my entire portfolio, I put it under my bed, and I said, you know what? It doesn't exist. Can I actually create a whole new portfolio in 2 weeks? And that is exactly what I did. You know why? Because I wanted the guy in Florida to get my portfolio, see my name and go, oh, I remember him. Open up the book and say, oh, he did the effects drawings I said. He did the water. That's really good. Then he turns the page and there's another new drawing and another and another. I want him to go, wow, the entire portfolio is new. In 2 weeks, this student created an entirely new portfolio. Man, that guy works hard. And I sent it in and I waited. And I waited for a month. You ever have to wait to find out something? It's excruciating. I'm on the phone with my mom. Mom, I can't. She's like, you're going to get in. I'm like, you have to say that. You're my mom. Finally, one day I get a call and it's Andy on the phone. I'm like, hey man, what's up? He's like, blink off, you're not gonna believe this. I'm like, what? He says, they just built a brand new wing on the studio for the new interns. It's beautiful. He said, Saul, you deserve to be in there. I'm like, thanks, man. He says, you know what else they built? I'm like, what? He says, they built a basketball court for the next interns. It's an amazing basketball court for the animators. You got to play on that court. I'm like, thanks, man. I want to play on that court. He said, but there's one more thing they did. I said, what? He says they put a piece of paper up on the wall in the studio, and it has a list of the next interns. I'm like, yeah, and he goes, you're on the list. I said, what? He goes, you got it. Thank you. I was like, what? He says, you got it. I'm like, oh my gosh. I went over to my tape player. You guys don't know what tapes are. They play music, whatever. And I hit play on my Lion King soundtrack. And at the top of my lungs, it's the circle of life. And it moves us all. I'm like flipping out. You like the Lion King? Good movie. People are like leaning out of their dorm room. Bleakoff got in. Bleakoff got in. I get on the phone with my mom. I can't dial fast enough. I'm like, Mom. She's like, what? Did you do it? I'm like, no, Mom. We did it. She's like, what do you mean we did it? I said, Mom, you remember you took me to Florida, you embarrassed the heck out of me all day asking everybody, you took me to this school and that school. Every dream that you have for yourself, your parents want for you times 1 billion. And I can tell you as a dad of 4, and it is 100% true. But I said, Mom, guess what? You can stay in New York because I'm going to the happiest place on earth. And I got on a plane. I flew to Disney. There's a guy at the airport with one of those signs, you know what the name, you know those guys, right? I finally was one of those guys. I'm like, wow, I get to be the guy that sees the guy with the sign. Of course, this sign had like Mickey Mouse pointing at my name. Very cool. The guy drives us to the Disney studios. I get there, there's a big sign that says artist entrance. I'm like, wow, this is insane. How did I get here? I walk in, I sit at this animation desk. Beautiful, huge wooden desk, beautiful, modern, insane. On top of the desk is a nameplate. Saul Blinkoff, Jewish kid from New York. Today, you met a guy who was not as talented as most people in his school. And the guy worked really hard and he got what he wanted. But you know what, guys? It was just the beginning. Because when I was on the internship, I was the worst one again. There was 15 students from around the world that were all better than me. And I had to work a lot harder. The end of the internship, we find out we're going to be the first interns to work on an actual Disney movie. They told us we're going to get to draw on the movie Pocahontas. I was like, OMG. Oh, you like Pocahontas? Good movie. Find out we're going to work on Pocahontas. The very first scene they asked me to animate was a very dramatic scene in the movie. You got Kocoum is the guy that Pocahontas is supposed to marry. Well, he finds out that Pocahontas and John Smith are having a conversation, just the two of them in the forest at night. Well, he doesn't like that very much. So he walks through the forest. It's a very dramatic scene, middle of the night. He gets to this area where there are these leaves and these vines, and he's peeking through these leaves, and they asked me to animate the leaves. That's it. I was the leaf guy at Disney. And you know what? That was fine with me because I was terrified. You sit at your desk and you do a drawing of a leaf. The leaf is this big. But on a movie screen, it's a 50-foot leaf. It better be a good leaf. I took a Xerox of that drawing. I sent it home to my mom. She's so proud. She tells everyone, my son, he draws leaves at Disney. She's so proud. Takes that drawing, puts it on the fridge next to my sister who's still hanging there, you know. Oh, man. Eventually, I got to work on Pocahontas herself, an incredible opportunity. The last day of the internship, same guy with the white beard, that old guy that was 70 whatever who worked on Sleeping Beauty. Calls me into his office. He says, Saul, we want to offer you a 5-year contract. Would you like that? I'm like, why do you always ask me that? Yes, I would like that. I sign it and I hand it to him. This time, hey, no tug of war. Hey, baby, it's yours, you know? A week later, something comes in the mail that changes my life forever. Paycheck. Wow, they're paying me money to do what I love? You got to be kidding me. I went to Abercrombie and Fitch. I'm like, I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that. I went and bought a sports car. I'm like, I got the sun. I got everything I could want. I'm living in Disney World. I can't even believe it. After that, I start working on the movie The Hunchback of Notre Dame. You remember that movie? Yeah. I got to animate Hugo, the fat little gargoyle. Yeah, so I was drawing on that. And about a year into that movie, probably about halfway, I get a call from my mom. And she's like, honey, do you have any vacation time coming up? I'm like, yeah, I got vacation time coming up. She says, well, why don't you come to Israel with me and your dad? Now, you guys knew that something Jewish was going to be in this talk, right? I hope you didn't think this was the how do you become a Disney animator talk. Although if you do have those dreams, you've hopefully picked up a thing or two, right? So I said, okay, yeah, I'll go to Israel. That'd be fun. I go to Israel with my parents. I'm walking in the old city of Jerusalem. Raise your hand if you've been to the old city of Jerusalem. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Who has not been there? No guilt. Let me see. Who has not been there? Come on, be brave. Really? There's a couple. There's one right there. Okay. young lady, you have to go to Israel. Guys, she have to go? You gotta go. You gotta go home. No guilt. Now get the heck out. No. So I'm walking in the old city of Jerusalem, and there's a bagel place called Bonker's Bagels. It's not there anymore. And I'm hungry, so I order a bagel. But see, I'm from New York, so I know how to really order a bagel. My kids love this. I go into a bagel place with my kids, and they're like, Dad, which one should we get? Should we get the sesame? Should we get the poppy, the garlic? I'm like, why don't you get everything? Everything bagel, baby. Makes sense, right? I don't know. That's how I think. So I get the everything bagel, and I tell the Israeli guy behind the counter, I'm like, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to put cream cheese on that. That's the first layer. Second layer, he's like, what do you mean second layer? I said, well, there's an order. I don't want the tomatoes next to this, and I'm a very, control freak when it comes to my bagel. I want the cream cheese and the lox spread and the white fish and the red onions and the capers and the tomato and the Munster cheese. I want it in that order. I think I actually drew out a diagram for the guy. This poor Israeli guy. I put him through hell. Anyway, he makes my bagel. As he's making the bagel, in walks a guy who's got a hat on with a New York Knicks logo. So we start talking, yeah, Knicks, right? So he starts talking to me about basketball, and we're talking. I said, well, what are you doing here? He says, well, I'm on a yeshiva program. I said, you're in a yeshiva program? You don't look like a yeshiva guy. Yeshiva guy has, the payas and the fringes. You don't have that look. I said, what are you doing here? He says, I'm here because I want to find out how I fit into the Jewish people. I said, what do you mean fit in? What are you, a puzzle piece? I don't get it. And this is what he said. He said, I was raised a certain way. My parents decided what Hebrew school I went to. My parents decided what I did on Shabbos. My parents decided everything that I did. He said, now as a man, I want to find out what Judaism means to me. And as soon as he said that, I was envious. Look, I grew up in a conservadox Jewish home. My parents love Israel. They love Yiddishkeit. I had a sukkah every year. We had Friday night. My mom made a beautiful meal. She lit candles. My dad said Kiddush. We went to shul. We went to all the chagim. We did all that stuff. But everything that I did was for them. When I was in high school and middle school, I never thought about it, me. What do I want to do? How does it affect me? And when he said that, I said, you know what? I would love to do that someday. But how can I do that? I got my dream job at Disney. All of a sudden, the Israeli guy tells me my bagel's ready. I'm like, I forgot all about him. I don't know what happened to that guy. I'm looking at that bagel, and by the way, the Israeli guy actually made it like perfectly. Well, he had the diagram. How could you mess it up? I'm looking at that bagel, and it's awesome. And for some reason, this is what they do in Israel, right? They do a couple things a little odd. He takes that amazing bagel, puts it into a waffle iron, and goes, tss, and the whole thing is a flattened pancake. Everything shoots out of it into this wax paper. It is a disgusting mess. It's just awful. I'm holding this. This is a little side note on bagels in Israel. I'm holding this mess, and I say to the guy, dude, look what happened to my bagel. He looks at me with a straight face and says, so what do you want me to do? And I was like, hey, you were in the army. You don't have to do anything. I love the bagel this way. I love the flattened bagel. Who doesn't love the flattened bagel? I learned to love the Israeli bagels. I go back to Disney. I finish working on The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Then I work on the film Mulan. Do you remember Mulan? Whoa, let's get down to business to defeat the Huns. My kids are like, Dad, you're not going to sing for them. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to sing. Would that embarrass you? Yeah. Then I'm definitely going to sing. That's what I do to my kids. It's awful. So I'm working on Mulan. I'll give you a little inside scene, a little behind the scenes on Mulan. First of all, you have to know, at the Disney studios, we all have mirrors on our desks, not because we're vain, but we need to see facial expressions that we're animating. If you're animating a scene in Frozen and Olaf says, but some people are worth melting for, and you got to see his expression, but some people are worth melting. Oh, his eyebrows are going to go down. You have to see it before you animate it. Glenn Keane, one of the greatest animators at Disney who ever lived, used to run through the studio with a cape just to see how a cape settled before he would animate it on the Beast in Beauty and the Beast. Walt Disney brought deer into the studio. Lion King, they brought lions into the studio. Okay, chained up, but they were there. Always drawing from life. One of my buddies says, Saul, I'm animating this scene. It's a scene where Mulan, by the way, Mulan, if you don't know, she's dressed up like this guy. She goes into the army because her dad, who's old, she doesn't want him to go. It's kind of like Yentl in China, you know. So she's in the army, and these guys come up behind her as she has that big pole, and she's trying to figure out how to use it as a weapon. They take a big black beetle. You remember the scene, that big scorpion? And they put it down her back, and she's like, whoa. They mess her up. So my buddy's animating that scene, and he can't get the acting to work. He's like, Saul, can you help me out? You're good at figuring out acting. I'm like, sure. We go into a conference room. We set up a video camera. He's doing sketches and drawings. and I'm just not hitting the poses right. Something's just off. I say, oh, hold on a sec. I got an idea. I go into the kitchen. I open up the freezer. I take a big hunk of ice. I'm like, dude, get your camera ready. I take the ice. I drop it down my back. I'm like, whoa. So when you watch the movie Mulan, it's not a little Asian girl. It's a tall Jew from New York with ice down his back, okay? That's how we make the movies, the magic of the movies. So after Mulan, we find out the next movie we're going to work on is, I'm ready for the gasp when I say the name, Tarzan. Oh. Son of man, look to the sky. Gotta sing the song, sorry. There's just one problem. You see, they're not ready for the animators to draw on Tarzan yet. It takes 4 years to make a Disney movie. The first year you're writing the script. The second year you're doing all the character designs. The third year you're doing the visual development, the animation, the color. 4.5 years. Well, the animators would come into work every day with nothing to draw because they were still having problems with the script. We'd come into every day. A week would go by, 2 weeks with nothing to do. But you're getting paid. It's awesome. It's called downtime. If anyone ever offers you a job and they say, there's one thing, we have downtime, you take the job. Do you know what downtime is at Disney World? You ride the roller coasters all day. Every day it's Space Mountain, Thunder Mountain, Splash Mountain, woo! Every day, me and my friends. Well, 1 week, 2 weeks turned into 6 months. 6 months of downtime. It's amazing. I remember Disney has a hotel. They actually have 15 hotels in Disney World, each themed a different way with a different pool. Me and my buddies would crash different pools every day. I'm at this one pool. It had like one of those, current swimming pools, like a lazy river. It's called Disney Beach Club. I'm floating on my back, pina colada in my hand. My brother's off in law school freezing. He's like, dude, what are you up to these days? I'm like, Jay, you don't want to know. And I'm telling you guys, at that moment, floating on my back at the beach club, it hit me. I have everything that I've ever dreamed about. What if you could make a list of everything that you have ever wanted or could ever want, and you could actually check every single thing off there? Every one of them. Dream job, check. Making money, check. Girlfriend, who I later married, check. Best friends, basketball. I live in the Sunshine State. I mean, everything I ever could have wanted. There's no police on Disney property. You can drive as fast as you want. Don't try that at home. But when I was 22 years old, it was fun. I had everything I ever could have wanted. And as I'm floating on my back at the Disney Beach Club Hotel, something else hits me. It's not enough. Something is missing. You know what I remembered? I remembered the guy I met at the bagel place years earlier. And I told all my friends, guys, I'm getting out of the pool and I'm going to Israel. They're like, what are you going to Israel for? I go, because I want to find out how I fit in to the Jewish people. They're like, what are you, a puzzle piece? I get on a plane, I go to Israel. I'm in a program called Israelite for 10 days, that's it. There's 2 guys, 7 women. We're all young professionals. We all want to figure out how we fit into Judaism. I remember the first day I'm in this room. It's a Crusader-built room, 500 feet away from the Western Wall, the Kotel. Unbelievable. I'm in there and the rabbi walks in. He speaks to us for 15 minutes, that's it. And what did he say in those 15 minutes? Well, whatever he said, it changed the course of my life forever, forever. Here's what he said. He looked at us and he said, how many of you know what a mezuzah is? I said, yeah, I know what a mezuzah is, the thing on the doorway. Yeah, I get it. He said, well, what's it for? I said, I don't know. Doesn't it protect your house from evil spirits or something? He's like, okay, we'll come back to that. He said, what's inside the mezuzah? I said, there's something inside. I thought it was a piece of artwork that has a shin for Shaddai, God's name. You put it on the thing there. I didn't really realize. Maybe there was something inside. I didn't know. He said, inside the mezuzah is a cloth. It's a parchment. It actually has part of the Torah. He said to us, I want you to imagine for a minute that it's actually true that God is real. What if it's true? Imagine it is real, that there is actually a creator of the world. He said, imagine it's also true that God actually wrote letter by letter the Torah itself. Oh, what does that mean? Did God inspire the Torah? But Moses doesn't, God doesn't have a hand. Did he tell Moses what's right? He's like, put that all out of your head. What if it's true there's a God? And what if it's true he actually wrote the Torah? You know what we're commanded to do in the Torah? We're commanded to take part of the Torah, the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We're supposed to take the Shema, put it on our doorpost. It doesn't make sense. If you guys go home today and there's an envelope waiting for you, your mom's like, oh, honey, this came in the mail for you. Oh, yeah, Mom, what is it? You turn it around and the return address says God. You'd be like, okay, that's funny. Who's playing a joke on me? You open it up. What if that letter starts floating and glowing? You'd be like, Mom, Dad, I got the floating letter from God. You would flip out. What would you do? You would take a selfie with the letter, right? You would put a glass jar around it with a red laser security system. You'd have a museum. You'd have the God letter. Here's what you wouldn't do. You wouldn't go, oh my gosh, Mom, you know what I'm doing with the God letter? I got a place for this, Mom. Bam, on the doorway. It doesn't make sense unless you understand what a doorway is. The rabbi looked at us and he said, you know what a doorway is? It's a place of transition. You're going out from your house into the world. A mezuzah is not a thing on a doorway. It's an opportunity to think. I'm going out into the world. What kind of a world do I want to create? What am I really living for? What do I want to do? I'm walking into my house. I wipe off my feet. Okay, that's nice. Hold on a sec. There's that mezuzah. Think for a minute. I'm going into my home. What kind of a home do I want to create? What are the values I want in my home? Why do I need a partner to help me create a home? I told him I had no idea there was meaning behind a mitzvah like this. Then he told us thousands of years ago the Jewish people had a temple. The Romans came and burned it. You know, if I found out that Sons of Israel, where I went to daven growing up in, Woodmere, New York, and Hewlett, burned down, you know what I would say to my mom on the phone? I'd be like, Mom, what happened? Oh, honey, Sons of Israel burned down. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Is everybody okay? Oh yeah, they're fine. It happened at like 2:30 in the morning. Oh, good. What about the Torahs, Mom? Did they rescue the Torahs? The Torahs are fine. The Aron Kodesh was made out of lead. It was the right angle. Torahs are fine. I'd say, Mom, this is actually really good news. She'd be like, what do you mean it's good news? I told you the temple burned down. You grew up going to. They're going to find a donor, Mom, who's going to feel so bad that the temple burned down that they're going to give more money. They're going to build a brand new shul. It's going to revive the community. They're going to bring the people and the Torahs back in. It's going to be the best thing for the Jewish people. The rabbi looked at us and said, you don't get it. Every Jew lived in one place. Every Jew lived right there. The Romans weren't telling the Jews, you need to go find a new building to pray in. They were telling the Jews, you can't be Jews. They tried to take away their identity. Then he told another story of a woman in the Holocaust. True story. She's 21, 22. She looks to a rabbi in the Holocaust and she says to the rabbi, Rabbi, I need a knife. And the rabbi looks into her eyes and he can tell that she wants to end her life. And he says, don't do this. Don't let them win. And she says, Rabbi, I need a knife. And as they're speaking, 2 Nazi guards approach. The Nazis see the Jew speaking. They're like, Jew, what are you doing? And she looks up to them. And she sees in one of their breast pockets a knife. And she looks to the Nazi guard and she demands his knife. She says, give me your knife. He can't believe she's giving him an order. They'll shoot you for that. They'll shoot you anyway. They're murderers. The other Nazi guard says, give her the knife. What's she going to do? We have guns. So they hand her the knife. And she's holding this razor-sharp knife and she reaches down to her leg and pulls up a bundle of clothing. She undoes the bundle and inside the bundle is a brand new newborn baby boy. It's her son. And she takes her son in her hands. She looks up to the heavens, and the rabbi, he looks, he can't look, he turns away, he can't even look. And she says to God, God, you gave me this beautiful baby boy, and now I'm going to return him to you perfect. And with that, she took the knife and performed on her son, bris milah. Gave him a circumcision right there. You know why? Because the kid is a Jew. Because he's a Jew, and she wasn't going to let them win. Because she knows that's the identity of this kid. And she takes her crying son, and I'm a dad, and I have a son, and I don't know how you do this. She takes her son who's crying and leans over and puts him into the arms of the Nazi. The baby's crying. She turns to walk away. No more crying baby. Another gunshot. She falls to the floor. Both of them murdered. And you hear that story. Can you imagine the tears over Auschwitz? But if you go deep in that story, there is something so profound. You know what Reb Noach Weinberg said? He said, if you don't know what you're willing to die for, you're not living for anything. If we don't know what we're willing to die for, what are we living for? Each one of us stands on the shoulders of the most unbelievable history that any people has ever known. If you could go back to the night the temple was burning and whisper into the ear of one Jew as they're watching everything burn and tell them, don't worry, because thousands of years in the future, I'm going to be here. The Jews are going to be here. I can have Shabbos anytime I want. I can learn Jewish wisdom anytime I want. I go to a Jewish school. They wouldn't believe you. If you could go up to that woman in the Holocaust and say, don't worry, the Nazis are going to be gone. We're going to have the state of Israel. We're going to be able to live as Jews. She'd say, it's not possible. And the rabbi looked at us and he said, now that you know that, what will you do with it? Each one of us has to make that decision for ourselves. What does it mean to me? What am I going to do about that? We stand on the shoulders of the most unbelievable history. Well, I didn't know what to do with that. I said to the rabbi the last day, I never knew any of this growing up. You know what he said to me? Saul, it doesn't matter what you know. It matters what you do with what you know. I went back to Disney, was animating on Tarzan. I loved it. I got to animate Turk. Remember Turk, the little monkey, trashing the camp? It was awesome. Every Friday night, me and my buddies were 10 rows back at the AMC theaters to watch whatever movie came out. Because Friday night was Friday night at the movies as far as I was concerned. And I'd go to the movies with my friends and I'd come back and I wanted something to connect me to Israel, to Shabbos, that experience I had. So I'd open up the Parsha and I would read for 5 minutes. And it was awesome. Then I get a job offer from my agent. It says, Saul, we have a job opportunity for you to go to New York to direct, because I wanted to be a director. I don't want to just sit and animate anymore. I wanted to start telling stories and take more responsibility. He says, I have a job offer for you at MTV. I read the script. It was definitely not the kind of show that I would be showing my kids today, but I thought, you know what? It's me getting my directing chops. It's an opportunity. Let me go interview for it. I went for the interview, and I got offered the job. Amazing. Left Disney, went to Manhattan, the Upper West Side, to be a director. I'm walking through Manhattan. It's freezing cold. It's the middle of the year, January, February. And I remember, like, so cold. I'm trying to find a place to live, and there's one apartment called the Key West. And the logo was palm trees, and it reminded me of Florida. I'm like, oh, perfect. I walk in the place, and just like every other place I saw, no vacancy. No one has an apartment. No one's looking for a roommate. As I'm standing in the lobby, a guy walks up. Unbelievable how this happened. He puts a card up on the wall and says he's looking for a roommate. I said, dude, you got to take that card down. He's like, why? I said, because I'm going to be your new roommate. He's like, well, hold on a sec. He says, are you Shomer Shabbos? I said, what's Shomer Shabbos? He says, if you're asking what Shomer Shabbos is, you're not Shomer Shabbos. I said, well, what is it? He goes, well, do you tear toilet paper? I'm like, what are you talking about? You crazy, fanatical, religious man. Go away from me. I said, look, I came back from Israel, like learning a little bit, but I do tear toilet paper, you know? He goes, you turn on lights? I'm like, well, how else would you see? You know? I walk out of the place, I'm like, forget it. I'm in the city, freezing. All of a sudden, a minute later, I turn, I run back in, I say, hey, I'm going to be Shomer Shabbos. I needed a place to live. I tried it out. I meet young professionals a lot. They'll tell me they go on dates and they have bad dates. And I always say the same thing. I'm like, if you go on a bad date, you think you just wasted your time? You didn't waste your time. You know what happens on a bad date? You just found out that that person is not the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. You just got clarity. As a matter of fact, you just got clarity more to understand the kind of qualities you are looking for someone someday. You get to learn about yourself. I thought I'd try out Shabbos. If I like Shabbos, I know. And if I don't, I'll know. And you know what happened? I fell in love with Shabbos. How could you not? I'm 24 years old in the Upper West Side. Great group of friends. Every Shabbos, a l'chaim, a song. It was awesome. I loved it. Then I went to my first religious wedding. I always tell people they should get Vince Vaughn and do like the Wedding Crashers, religious wedding style. It'd be an awesome movie. A year and a half later, I had my own observant religious wedding. I want to give you a scene from my wedding that was absolutely the best part for me. I'm sitting in this room, the tish. All my buddies are around me. Tish is the Yiddish word for table. All of a sudden, someone leans in and says, showtime, and you hear the music. And they dance me out. They dance me out to this huge room, hundreds of people. And in that end of the room, my wife-to-be, Marion, is sitting in a chair. She's got her mother, her sister, my sister, all her friends are there. And for a week leading up to the wedding, Marion and I didn't speak, I didn't see her, I didn't text her, nothing. Jewish tradition says it's a nice custom. You don't see each other, you don't speak leading up to the wedding. Beautiful idea. Builds anticipation, you don't want to get into a fight, you know. So you're like, I'm not going to see you, I'll meet you at the wedding. As they dance me over, there's one thing I want to see. I want to see her face. I want to see her face at that moment. See, I remember every expression. I remember the expression on her face when I got down on my knee and I asked her, will you marry me? Think I'll ever forget that expression? That look on her face? You think I'll ever forget her expression on her face when our first kid was born? You think I'll ever forget the expressions that came out of her mouth a minute before our first kid was born? And as they dance me over to her, I can't see her. All of a sudden, the sea splits, the guys all move to the side, and they dance me over to her, and she's sitting in that chair. And Jewish tradition has the most unbelievable thing here. I'm looking at her eyes, head beams of light staring up at me. They dance me over to her, and I'm supposed to take her veil and cover her face. Honey, you are so beautiful. I just can't look. What is that about? It doesn't make sense. As a matter of fact, if you want to understand anything in Judaism, you know where you should start? Start with what doesn't make sense. And if you don't think anything doesn't make sense in Judaism, you're not Jewish. Every year, I always think, I live in LA, and we live in a nice Jewish community in Pico, Beverlywood, if you know that area. And there's Beverlywood, how you doing? And there's a couple of people near us that aren't Jewish. And I always think that every year my neighbor must be on the phone with one of her friends saying, okay, Marge, yeah, Tina, my Jewish neighbors, they're doing that thing again. What is it? They're building their homeless shelter. Why are they doing? Oh my gosh, Marge, what is it? They're putting a grass roof on their homeless shelter, and their kids are doing artwork for their homeless shelter. Oh my gosh, Marge, they're dressed up in their finest clothes. They're hosting a dinner in their homeless shelter. Their Jews are happy, they're homeless. What is up with the Jews? And you know what? She's right. It doesn't make sense unless you go a little deeper. And you realize that when the Jewish people were in the desert for 40 years and 40 nights, 40 years and many more nights than that, for 40 years, they had the clouds of glory around them. You know what the clouds of glory were? In the middle of the desert, it's scorching hot. Scorching hot in the middle of the day. At night, freezing cold. You know what the clouds of glory were? It was God. In the middle of the day when it's scorching hot, the clouds of glory gave them an air-conditioned breeze. At night when it was cold, there was a heated breeze around them. There was manna from heaven. The kids, the 4-year-old, you had a shirt on, the shirt grew with you. It was one nace, one miracle after another. If we could sit in our sukkah for 1 minute, just 1 minute, and be real with one idea, you know what? I don't need my house to be secure. I don't need all the things in this world to be secure, because you know what I got? I got the creator of the world that sustains me every minute of the day. And if we could be real with that for 1 minute, how could you not be besimcha? How could you not have joy? So what's the meaning behind why I cover up her face? I look into the eyes of the woman I'm going to spend my life with. And Judaism says, you see who you see in front of you, but you're also committing to the hiddenness of a person. I see who you are right now, but I'm also committing to what's hidden, what I don't see. Because you know what? We grow, we evolve. Rabbi David Aarons says, we're not just human beings, we're human becomings. We change. Beautiful idea. We get married, we moved out to LA, to Beverly Hills. I returned to Disney as a director, start directing a Winnie the Pooh movie called Winnie the Pooh Springtime with Rue. I got to work with the greatest characters. Yeah, I got to work with Winnie the Pooh. Yeah, I think I'll have a smackerel of honey. And Rabbit, no, Tigger, do it like this. And Piglet, oh, dear. And Eeyore, thanks for noticing me. And Tigger, right? All the characters love the 100-Acre Wood. The first day I'm on the movie, a huge drawing is put in front of me, and they say, Saul, you need to approve the drawing of the 100-Acre Wood, the way the trees are and the thing. So I'm looking at everything, it all looks good, and I give a little signature, and everything's approved. Everyone leaves the room, and all of a sudden, I think in my head, don't Disney artists always hide something in the drawing? I'm going to do it. I sharpen my pencil. I'm like, what am I going to write? My name? What am I going to do? I get an idea. I go over to Winnie the Pooh's doorway, and right next to the doorway, I drew in a mezuzah. I hit a mezuzah. Now he's not Winnie the Pooh. He's Winnie the Jew. I put it in the movie. Yeah. The next movie I directed, Kronk's New Groove, the sequel to Emperor's New Groove. Yeah. Like Kronk. Yeah, Kronk. That guy. Him. Hey, Tipo. Kronk. Yeah, so I'm directing that movie, and I'm reading the script, and it says that Kronk gets married. I'm like, oh, let's give him a chuppah. Let's make him a Jew. You watch the movie. Mazel tov. It's in the movie. I got my wedding album out. I gave a picture of the chuppah with the calla lily flowers that my wife picked out. I gave it to the art director. He put that in the movie. You know, I live in an incredible Jewish community. People ask me all the time, how do you balance working in Hollywood, being a Jew? And I'm telling you guys, I'm completely honest about everything. You know, I didn't wear this all the time. When I came back from Israel, I wasn't ready to wear this. As a matter of fact, if you told me someday you're going to wear a kippah to work, I would have told you, you're nuts. If you would have told me someday. That's it? That's it. Okay, one more minute. One more minute. I balance. I hope you're not booing me. I got to say this last thing. We balance it. My family balances it. First of all, number one is you're all invited Shabbos. Not all at one time, of course. But if you're ever in LA, you come look us up Shabbos. I want you to come to us Friday night. Please look us up, Facebook me, and you'll say, someday you came to my school and you guys come for Shabbos. I mean that. That's number one. Number two, my son My son Asher, he's 6 years old. He had an audition for a movie. This is a very Hollywood story. He had an audition like a year ago to do a voice in a movie. He'd never gone on an audition before. So he's about to go into the audition. He's got his little black felt kippah on. It says Asher Chaim, his name, embroidered in there like the little kids do, right? He's about to go into the audition. He's like, Dad, should I take my kippah off? I'm like, why would you take your kippah off? You're a yid. Go in there. He's like, what about my tzitzis? I'm like, make them longer. Get in there, man. Get in there. So he goes into the audition. There's like hundreds of kids, and he gets a call back. It's amazing. He's actually confident. He goes and does the voices. He gets another audition a week later for the same one, for the callback. And we find out from his agent, he got the job. My son is the star of a major movie right now in theaters, Hotel Transylvania 2, if you know the movie. Yeah, watch. He's the voice of the little kid with the red hair, Dennis. That's little Ashi. And I'm telling you, you look at the credits, Mel Brooks, Adam Sandler, Adam Sandberg, Asher Blinkoff, it's right there. They told us they have the premiere on Shabbos. Well, we said we can't go to their premiere. They're like, but all these other guys are Jewish. I'm like, oh, you can ask them how they can go to their premiere. So what did Sony do? Like 3 weeks ago, they gave us the Sony lot, a huge theater, 120 friends and family. Everyone was in there. We make it work. The last thing I want to tell you is this, and this really is the last thing. It is not easy to figure out how we're going to live our lives as Jews. But the essence of what a Jew means, the word Yisrael, Am Yisrael, it means one thing, struggle. Jacob is wrestling with an angel. He gets his name turned to Yisrael. It means struggle. The greatest pleasure you will ever have in your life is where you've invested yourself and where you've worked hard. That is the essence. It's pain really is pleasure. You go home tonight, ask your mom and dad, Mom, Dad, what's the greatest pleasure you've ever had? You know what they'll tell you? You. Now ask them this question, Mom, Dad, what's the greatest pain you've ever had? You know what they'll tell you? You. Don't be afraid of hard work, guys. I believe in you. Thank you so much. Good Shabbos!
Thank you so much, Saul. Everyone, please make your way upstairs.